So we had my niece and nephew stay the weekend with us because we had a bunch of family stuff going on. And so we had to buy like the store-bought chocolate milk because they like it more. And that means I get to do this. Don't tell Meredith.
Have you ever thought about why you believe things? Today I want us to talk about interpretation and what that means for me personally, but also to begin a conversation about interpretation really for all of us. And I'll be making a few videos on this on the channel over the next couple of weeks. But hey, I'm Chad Brooks, I'm a pastor here in Louisiana. I make videos about the Bible, the spiritual life, and the everyday life of a pastor. And I feel like we need to talk about interpretation. Now, you might be asking, Chad, why this is a Bible channel. I come here for reviews. I come here to see how you mark up Bibles. That's kind of the thing you do. And yeah, I've got a really interesting style of chicken scratch on Bibles that folks on YouTube have kind of started liking over the last year or so. But I want to think a little bit about interpretation, and this is it. I came to the realization a couple of years ago that what I really care about, not just in the scripture and that sort of thing, but just the way that I think of being a Christian, but also being a pastor, is I want to be, positive focused. I care about active holiness. I take the words of Jesus seriously, and I think he really asks us to change the world alongside of him. And y'all, Christianity is a little depressing right now. I'm a United Methodist pastor, and I'll just be honest with you, it's especially depressing in my tribe right now. And I've been thinking about, what does it mean to live there and to live in that space and to do that? And I realize that so much of what it takes to be positive focused, to stay oriented towards active holiness, those things, is really to begin thinking seriously about what you believe and that sort of a thing. And so one of the things I realized is that the internet does not help our faith at all. I'm actually working on a video about why I'm on YouTube as a pastor, especially now. And I think what's interesting is this, and I thought about this at first when I was in seminary and grad school, 10, 12 years ago, is this, fundamentalism as a belief system exists not just in Christianity, but it exists in all sorts of other religions in the world. But what's so interesting about fundamentalism is it is a relatively recent phenomenon. If you just kind of do some Googling around, and you'll see that fundamentalism really has only been around for the last 100 years. And this is where I think we have to think about it sociologically. Because we hear the word fundamentalism and we assume certain things. But really and truly, what I think defines fundamentalism from a religious sociological experience is that fundamentalism is what happens when you actually don't believe in anything. You just don't believe in things. What that means is there's not a positive distinction towards these things. Instead is just this fear-based system of saying, well, I don't believe in that. I don't believe in that. And what's so interesting is fundamentalism also goes both ways. That it is possible on the political spectrum and on the religious spectrum to be a fundamentalist. And I think that what we see, especially when we talk about the deconstruction movement and all these sorts of things, especially the rapidly changing religious trends of people who are under the age of 40. And I know a lot of you who watch this channel are in your 20s and your early 30s. That what we see is this. There is a small fragment of Americans in the religious, let's call it in the Christian space, that have a level of fundamentalism. So on the progressive left, but also on the uber conservative right, there's a handful of people that are there. But then there's this big, huge gulf in the middle. And I think that's where many of us find ourselves. And if you've been struggling with faith, or if you have just seemed disjointed in the last 3, 4, 5 years, it's probably because you're in the middle and you don't really know what to do when you're in the middle. So that's why I want us to talk about interpretation. The first thing I want to talk about in this video really is this, that the why and the how is as important as the what. So the why we believe what we believe and how we believe what we believe might be more important than what we believe in these moments. James Fowler, in his book Stages of Faith, came out in the 70s. One of the things that he talked about was the average American religious person, regardless of what they believed, if they were a Christian, if they were Jewish, if they were a Hindu, if they were an atheist, all these things, never really progressed past the second stage of faith, which is an elementary school understanding, or what I would call like the VBS idea of faith. Father Abraham had many sons, and what that meant was when adulthood hit and true faith crisis started, or just honestly life crisis started, we did not know what to do. And I think that's because we were always just told what to believe, not why we believe or how we believe. And we're in the middle of a 500-year cultural shift. We're in the middle of something that they will be talking about and writing in the history books for as long as there are still humans on this earth. But we can't take our faith for granted in this space. What does it mean for us to be a faithful person in the midst of how every single thing seems to be rapidly changing around us? That's why interpretation matters. Remember, the why we believe and the how we believe is as important as the what. Now, when I was in seminary in the mid-2000s at Asbury Theological Seminary, I took Alan Coppage my very first semester for his basic Christian doctrine class. Now, I thought basic Christian doctrine would mean basic doctrine. What I did not realize is most folks were not recommended to take this class until the end of their second year, and especially with Coppage, because he was known to be really, really tough. And I've never worked harder in my life than I did in an Al Coppage class, but I'm glad I did. And I learned about this thing. And the systematic theology that we read was a 3-part volume, Thomas Oden. There's a 1-volume version of this, but man, I got to tell you, Thomas Oden really hits the nail on the head in so many ways. And Oden's understanding of how we define the essentials of faith was taken from this thing that's called the Vincentian Canon by Catholic theologian St. Vincent of Lérins. Now, the Vincentian Canon was this: that we learn to weigh the things that teach us and that we hold to the most. Vincent had this thing that he said, and this was it: what has been believed everywhere, always, and by all. That's the Vincentian Canon. What has been viewed everywhere, always, and by all. And so what he's saying is, don't get bogged down in the things that you are only being confronted with, or that people have been saying that they've only believed for the last 10, 15, 20 years. That's why I talked about fundamentalism, because fundamentalism as a belief system and all the things that come from fundamentalism have only really been around for the last 100 years. So what the Vincentian Canon would look like, this is what I learned in seminary from Alan Coppage, who leaned heavily into Thomas Oden. And the way that Thomas Oden wrote his systematic theology is this: that we spend the predominant amount of our time, the things that we learn, the things we lean on, the things that we trust, the ways that we define things, we spend the majority of our time in Scripture to do those things. The next layer that we spend our time and our focus is in the patristic church fathers. I love the church fathers. I've learned a lot from the church fathers, and I think especially in the moments we're in right now, we can continue to learn from the church fathers. Read Alan Kreider's fantastic book, The Patient Ferment of the Early Church, or Rodney Stark's book, The Triumph of Christianity, and learn really about why the fathers and the mothers were the ballers those first 300 years. And so, Scripture, the fathers. The next thing is medieval Christianity. St. Thomas Aquinas, Vincent of Lérins. There is a lot of deep Christian thought that was thought about thousands of years ago, 1,500 years ago. That sort of a thing. The next layer is Reformation theology. And then the final layer, think about it, in the pyramid that I have right here in front of the screen, is in modern theology and modern writing. So remember, Vincent of Lérins said, what has been believed everywhere, always, and by all people. And so what he's talking about, it circles back the idea of positive Christianity, of active holiness. Because friends, I feel like so many times we can find ourselves, weighed and bogged down in controversies that have been only existing for several months. Or we can buy into the fear-based system or the negative-based systems of the world, all those sorts of things, and just become absolutely encapsulated in mind, body, and spirit in something that did not show up until last week and is going to go away in a week. One of the ways that I have found myself finding just peacefulness and restfulness in the middle of chaos, in the middle of theological chaos and doctrinal chaos and denominational chaos. In these moments is realizing this is going to last a little bit. And we're in the middle of a massive, huge shake that might take 100 years to sort itself out. That we are really at a Council of Nicaea moment. We are in a great schism moment. We're in a moment that's going to take a lot longer than a Twitter thread to fix. And so it's not those things that don't exist, but put them into perspective with what we know to be believed and trusted and held always, everywhere, and by all people. And so that's kind of this introduction to a conversation about interpretation. And so what I want to leave you with is 2 questions to think about. The first one is this: what are you starting with? I think so many times when we think about things that are difficult, that we're struggling with, that we're passionate about, all those sorts of things, what are you starting with? The next question is this: where does it lead you? My next video, we're gonna pick apart some teachings of Jesus using those 2 questions. What are you starting with, and where is this leading to? But this is starting a short video series on interpretation. It's going to last 2, maybe 3 videos. But I'm Chad Brooks. If you like content like this is a little bit different of a video for the channel, and I'd love to hear what you think about it. And you can just drop a comment down below and jump on and be part of this conversation about what does it mean for us to find peacefulness and stability in the middle of theological chaos. So I will see you back in the next video.